Hey, it's Matt. Welcome to another episode on Variable 73. So, I found this article on Movieweb, which you can see on the screen right now. Uh, and I'm going to discuss the article and give you my top five Hammer films, which I don't think I've done before. Okay, I think I've done horror films, not Hammer films. So, you've got to be careful when you look at lists of subgenre films, books, or whatever, because oftentimes the writer, even though well intentioned, only has a surface or rather shallow understanding of the topic. In my opinion, this author, Donnie Smith, however, either he knows these films really well or someone working for him does. So let's briefly go over their top 10, and then I'll scroll up and down their list, okay? Um, Donnie's top 10 are Horror of Dracula, which is what's known as in the U.S., from 1958, The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957, The Curse of the Werewolf from 1961, The Mummy from 1959, The Plague of Zombies from 1966, The Abominable Snowman from 1957, The Devil Rides Out from 1968, The Reptile from 1966, The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires from 1974, Let Me In from 2010. The image you see there, which you'll see in my thumbnail as well, is from the first three films. Dracula, 1958, or Horror of Dracula, is Christopher Lee as the Count. On the left is Peter Cushing playing Dr. Frankenstein. On the right is, what was his name? The guy playing the werewolf from Curse of the Werewolf, and I should know his name. I'm ashamed to admit I should know his name and don't. Curse of the Werewolf. Cass. Oh, Oliver Reed. Okay, great actor. I just blanked on his name. Okay. So there's only one really objectionable member on that list of the top 10 I just mentioned. Okay, Let Me In is a subpar remake of the classic Let the Right One In from 2008. The classic was a Swedish film from director Thomas Alfredson based on a novel of the same title from 2004 by John Avjide Lindquist. Okay. Go watch the original Let the Right One In. Okay. There are at least 15 other Hammer films that are better than that. Let Me In. Other interesting stuff to mention from their list about films, which are not on my top five, Legends of the Seven Golden Vampires is a co-production between two legendary studios, Hammer Film Productions and Shaw Brothers Studio, who produced hundreds of quality martial arts movies. Roy Ward Baker, who directed several Hammer horror films, including Quartmass and The Pitt and Scars of Dracula, teamed up with the legendary Hong Kong action movie director Chang Che, who directed classics like The One-Armed Swordsman, The Duel, The Boxer from Shangtung, and Five Shaolin Masters, and one of my 3 or 4 favorite Hong Kong action films, The Five Deadly Venoms. The production of this movie can be a video by itself. In any case, I'll move on. Hammer's first Mummy film, 1959's The Mummy, is not a remake or a sequel to the original 1932 Universal movie, but rather basically rips its plot out of several of the sequels to the 1932 film, including The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Tomb, and The Mummy's Ghost. And The Plague of Zombies is one of the films that inspired George Romero to create Night of the Living Dead. So let's get right on my top 5. Okay? Now, I also link below to the Hammer filmography, which is all the Hammer films, not just the horror films. Okay, and so my favorite Hammer film is on the list. It's The Devil Rides Out. It's based on a 1934 novel by Dennis Wheatley, which is the 6th book in a series about the Duc de Richelieu. Excuse me there. Christopher Lee stars as the dark but heroic Duc de Richelieu. I wish they had done more of this guy's work. I read 1 or 2 when I was younger. I really want to get into reading them all. If I ever live long enough to read everything I want to read. You know. Charles Gray, always menacing as a villain, plays Mokata, the leader of the satanic cult. The story is basically what modern readers and viewers would call urban fantasy, and it would fit right in with the Dresden Files, the Mercy Thompson series, and so on. The story is about the Duc de Richelieu returning from a trip, and he finds that his friend has fallen in with a cult of devil worshippers. One of the things that makes it great is that, like all Hammer films, it takes the story as seriously as the story itself does. As in the more absurd Hammer films, they escalate the absurdity to keep true to that story's nature. This story is a dead serious urban fantasy tale with horror elements. I mean, of course, attention to detail, as all Hammer films, is meticulous. My second favorite Hammer film is Christopher Lee's first turn as Dracula in the 1958 Dracula film, which is known in the U.S. as Horror of Dracula. The film itself is extremely well done, but what sells this film to me and many others is Christopher Lee's performance as the Count. He needed no flashy special effects or jump scares or extreme gore scenes. He conveyed Dracula's evil and dire presence pretty much with pure acting. After those two, it's not so much a specific order as tiers. And so my next three come out of a group of maybe 7 to 10 films. So first up, I chose The Gorgon. This film stars Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and Richard Pascoe, who starred in the Hammer film Rasputin and Mad Monk, and Barbara Shelley, who you probably know from Village of the Damned, or my next pick on this list, which I'll get to in a minute. The Gorgon is about the investigation into a series of, serial murders in a remote British town. Murders which have a supernatural solution that no one wants to accept. Next up is Quartmass and the Pitt, which I just referred to as Barbara Shelley, which is known in the U.S. as 5 Million Years to Earth, from 1967. Hammer has several Quartmass movies which are all adaptations of BBC television serials. Andrew Keir replaces Brian Donlevy in the titular role of Professor Quartmass. This film is a science fiction horror film. If you played the Palladium Books RPG Beyond the Supernatural, or read the works of H.P. Lovecraft, you kind of get the idea of one of the tone of these films. Interestingly enough, a lot of Tom Baker's Doctor Who serials were once similar science fiction horror stories, and you'll see quite a few of the names who did the Hammer films working on Doctor Who in that era. Finally, to round out my top, let's Quartmass and the Pitt for you guys. To round out my top 5 favorite, I could have chose several, but I chose a fun one: Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter. This film is a horror film with swashbuckling elements. It stars Horst Janssen as the titular Captain Kronos. And more importantly, and maybe I had a crush on this actress for years when I was young, it stars the serene and beautiful Caroline Munro, who you would know from The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which, like this film, was released the year I was born. But more importantly, Caroline Munro played Victoria in my two all-time favorite horror movies, which are not Hammer films, but they're my favorite horror films above any others. They star Vincent Price, The Abominable Dr. Phibes, and Dr. Phibes Rises Again. So, I don't want to belabor this. It's been a short, swift video just sharing my thoughts on the Hammer films. They're timeless. It's a timeless studio. It's a legendary. As I said, there are certain studios you associate with certain things, Hammer and horror. Another one before was Shaw Brothers and Kung Fu and martial arts films. Legendary pictures in the modern era get associated with a lot of big budget sort of monster like epic type films. If they keep it up, they'll have that same sort of trend, and probably others I'm just not mentioning now. But anyway, I've linked below to the entries in the movie database, as well as as I mentioned, all the stuff I just showed you guys. The movie database, by the way, is an alternative source for information about movies that is not owned by Disney or Amazon. Okay? So if you want, there's a corresponding TV database run by the same organization. Oh, excuse me. Share your favorite Hammer films below, and maybe I'll do some videos about them. But more importantly, if you have not explored the Hammer films, it's Halloween season to do so. Thanks for watching my video. Smash the like button if you liked it. Hit the dislike if you didn't. Comment down below if you have any questions for me or about this video. Please share the video if you found it worthwhile. I'm Matt. This has been another episode of Unbearable 73. Have a nice day, and I am out of here.